Inspire hope, promote wellness. This is Compass Points. Hi, this is Dr. Paul Tomlinson from Compass Health Network. On this show, I'll share ideas, hacks, tips, and skills drawn from research in the behavioral and health sciences. You can think of Compass Points as navigation assistance for the path to better health and wellness. So let's get to the Compass Point. 50 years ago this month, when I was just a little kid, my family lost our home to fire. It was a devastating fire. It burned our home to the ground, and we lost every single thing we owned, including all the things you can never replace, like family pictures and old home movies and that sort of thing. Thankfully, we all got out alive and no one was hurt. But I've had an abiding sensitivity since then to the havoc and distress caused by losing your home in a fire. But I've also had an abiding sense of what can happen with respect to the aftermath, the incredible kindness and generosity and compassion of our fellow human beings that can help us, those of us who are victims, get through the darkest times, the most devastating losses, and find recovery on the other side. My family lived in the Los Angeles area in the 50s and 60s, and that's actually where I was born. So I've been really feeling it deep, seeing and hearing of the devastation and the tens of thousands of families that have lost their homes to the awful fires in LA. So it just felt like a good time to do an episode on this topic with the aim of inspiring hope and promoting wellness somehow, some way. So I want to talk about the psychological impact of losing your home in a fire and the profound role that kindness and compassion can and must play in the aftermath. This is a story of heartbreak, resilience, and the power of human connection. Imagine this, in a single moment, everything you've built, your memories, your safe space, your sense of normalcy, reduced to ashes. Losing a home in a fire is more than a physical loss. It's a psychological and emotional upheaval that can leave really lasting scars. The emotional toll of losing your home is profound and multifaceted. Studies show that survivors of house fires often experience acute stress reactions, symptoms of PTSD, anxiety, and depression. No one's surprised by those findings, right? The sudden and uncontrollable nature of a fire triggers a kind of primal fear response, leaving survivors feeling vulnerable and powerless. According to research published in the Journal of Traumatic Stress, individuals who lose their homes in natural disasters or fires often struggle with a disrupted sense of identity. See, our homes are extensions of who we are, a safe haven where we express ourselves and build our lives. When that's taken away, it can feel like a part of us has been destroyed too. Children and adolescents are particularly vulnerable. A study in child and adolescent psychiatry and mental health found that young survivors often experience heightened anxiety, disrupted sleep, and academic difficulties in the aftermath of such events. This highlights the importance of immediate and ongoing support for families who've lost their homes to fire. Now, amidst the ashes of such a loss, there's one thing that can truly help survivors begin to rebuild, and that's, of course, the kindness and compassion of others. It may sound simple, but the impact is immeasurable, literally. I still feel it viscerally 50 years later. The way our family and friends mobilized to help us, finding places for our very large family to sleep on that cold, snowy winter night in January of '75. I come from a family of 9 kids plus mom and dad, so there was no way we could all be together. So aunts and uncles and friends found safe places for us to stay that night and for weeks afterwards until we got back on our feet. We had neighbors and friends and family bring us boxes and bags of clothing because we literally lost every single stitch of clothing we owned. We had them bring us food, and they came and prayed with us and cried with us and told us everything was going to be okay, and that they would be there with us to help us rebuild however they could. Those are the messages that victims of fire and destruction need to hear. Those are the ones. Dr. Kristin Neff, who's a pioneer in the study of self-compassion, explains that acts of compassion, whether self-directed or from others, help mitigate feelings of shame, guilt, and helplessness that can often accompany traumatic events. When someone extends a helping hand, listens without judgment, or offers a kind word. It can provide a sense of safety and connection in the face of chaos like nothing else. Community support plays a pivotal role in recovery. In a 2019 study in the American Journal of Community Psychology, they found that individuals who felt supported by their community after a disaster were significantly less likely to develop post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. The presence of empathetic friends, neighbors, and even strangers fosters a sense of hope and belonging that's essential for healing. Again, from personal experience, I can only say amen to that. So what does kindness look like in the wake of such a loss? It doesn't have to be grand gestures. So there's a few things. Practical help is what kindness looks like. Offering a warm meal, clothing, temporary shelter. Simple acts remind survivors they are not alone. Second thing, listening without judgment. We all think we're good at this, but many of us could use some work. But giving someone the space to share their story can be incredibly healing. And by the way, no one needs to have their distress and tragedy politicized, as some have seemed to do with the LA fires for whatever reason. That helps absolutely no one, especially when they're in the midst of one of the greatest tragedies that can unfold for a human and their family. Third thing, community efforts. This is what kindness looks like. Organizing donation drives or community events to bring people together and provide resources for rebuilding for that family or those many families in the case of LA. These actions not only help survivors feel cared for, obviously, but also empower them to take the first steps toward rebuilding their lives. So what's the compass point? Well, if you or someone you know has experienced this kind of loss, remember that healing takes time. Seeking professional support from a therapist or counselor is not a sign of weakness, it's an act of strength. Please remember that. And if you're someone who wants to help, don't underestimate the power of your kindness. Even small gestures can have ripple effects that last a lifetime. The loss of a home is a tragic and life-altering event, but it's also an opportunity for communities to come together, for strangers to become allies, and for humans to shine in their most beautiful form. If you found this episode helpful and hopeful, please share it with someone who might need a little inspiration today. And remember, no matter how dark it gets, kindness is the way ahead.